Welcome back to In Response EDH. As always, I'm your host Albert, and I'm glad you can join us for another great Commander gameplay video. On today's episode, Mike joins us again, and this time he's playing Tuvasa the Sunlit, and thankfully not Atraxa. This is an Enchantress deck that wins through commander damage or burying us in just pure card value. He keeps an opening hand with Arcane Signet, Thought Vessel, All That Glitters, Satyr Enchanter, Eidolon of Countless Battles, Boulderloft Pathway, and an exotic orchard. Next up we have Daniel, and he's brought with him Klothys, God of Destiny. This is a token deck that wants to pop out a bunch of tiny creatures to use for mana and eventually pump them up and swing for lethal damage. He starts off the game with a Skull Clamp, Bloodbraid Elf, Radha Heart of Eld, Night Soil, Rootbound Crag, and 2 forests. Joseph is back again and looking to bounce back from his last couple of showings. So he pulled out the big guns with his partner commanders Ikra and Tymna the Weaver. This deck relies on Tymna to draw him extra cards each turn, and Ikra helps him gain a bunch of life that helps him win the game through Sanguine Blood or Aetherflux Reservoir. His opening hand consists of Austere Command, Solemn Simulacrum, Tainted Pack, Merciless Eviction, Dryad Arbor, Verdant Catacombs, and a Forest. And last but not least, we have me. And I've decided to bring out Kozilek, the Great Distortion. All I want to do is play huge Eldrazi's and annihilate the table. So I decided to keep a Lux Cannon, Palladium Mirror, Expedition Map, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, Ink Moth Nexus, Field of Ruin, and an Urza's Power Plant. Before we get started, we would like to remind you, if you enjoy our content and would like to support the channel, consider becoming a patron. When you do, you're not only contributing to the channel's growth, but you're also being entered in our monthly giveaways, as well as receiving patron-only perks. All proceeds of our Patreon are reinvested back into the channel to bring you the best content possible. We would also like to thank our sponsor, Dragon Shield. Hit the link in the description of this video to check out the best product out there to protect your cardboard. You can also support the channel by using our affiliate link when purchasing product and singles at TCG Player. With that said, and the introductions out of the way, let's start the game. Daniel wins a die roll and starts us off. He plays a basic force and taps it to cast a Skull Clamp. Mike then takes his turn and plays a Boulderloft Pathway and passes. I then start my turn by playing an Ink Moth Nexus. I then tap it and cast an Expedition Map and pass. Joseph plays a Dryad Arbor and passes back to Daniel. He then starts his turn playing an untapped Rootbound Crag and taps both lands to cast Radha Heart of Eld. He then ends his turn. Mike draws for turn and plays an Exotic Orchard. After that, he casts an Arcane Signet. I then draw for turn and play an Urza's Power Plant as my land drop. I tap both mana to sack the Expedition Map, choosing to search up an Ancient Tomb and putting it into my hand. Joseph plays a Verdant Catacomb as his land for turn. He pays 1 life to crack it and searches up a Temple Garden to the field tapped. Daniel starts turn 3 by playing another forest. He taps all 3 lands to cast his commander, Klothys, God of Destiny. He then moves to combat and hits me for 2 with Radha. He adds 2 red mana, but has nothing to spend it on. Mike starts his turn and draws. He then plays a Reliquary Tower as his land for turn. After that, he casts his commander, Tuvasa the Sunlit. I draw for turn and play the Ancient Tomb I searched for. I then tap 3 to cast Palladium Mirror, losing 2 life from the Ancient Tomb. Joseph draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He pays another 1 to sack it, and grabs a forest to the field and passes. Daniel draws for turn, and at the beginning of his main phase, he exiles the Misty Rainforest from Joseph's graveyard, adding a red mana to his mana pool. He then uses that mana to help pay for a Bloodbraid Elf. As it enters, it cascades.
So let's see what free spell she gets me. Sprouts Form, actually a horrible card to get with this.
Yeah.
I actually think I'm not going to cast it.
Ooh.
He then moves to combat and swings Radha and the elf at me for 5. I choose not to block and take the damage. Mike then untaps and draws for turn. He finds a mana crypt and casts it. After that, he completely taps out to cast Shark Typhoon. Tuvasa then draws him a card and gets +1/+1. He then moves to combat and swings his commander at Joseph for 2 commander damage. I start my turn drawing and tapping my Palladium Mirror and 2 lands to cast Lux Cannon. I then play a Guildless Common as my land for turn, bouncing the power plant back to my hand, and pass to Joseph.
Untap, upkeep. Give me a swamp.
He doesn't find one, even though he should have fetched for one earlier, and taps out to cast Solemn Simulacrum. As it enters, he finally decides to search up a swamp and puts it onto the battlefield tap. Daniel draws for turn and exiles the expedition map in my graveyard, this time dealing 2 to each of his opponents and gains him 2 life. After that, he casts Growing Rites of Itlimoc. As it enters, he looks at the top 4 cards of his library, revealing a Steelbane Hydra from among them and puts it into his hand. Daniel then moves into combat and swings at Mike for 5 damage, not noticing his commander is now a creature. Mike then starts his turn, rolling for the mana crypt and doesn't take any damage. He then taps 5 mana to cast a Sigil of the Empty Throne, making him a 5/5 flying shark off the Shark Typhoon and drawing a card from Tuvasa and buffing her up some more. He then drops a Henge-Gate Pathway on the field and casts an All That Glitters targeting Tuvasa, making a 4/4 Angel from the Sigil and a 2/2 Shark. He then moves to combat and swings his now 8/8 commander at Daniel. On his end step, I tap the Lux Cannon to add a charge counter. I then start my turn and make Joseph an offer he can't refuse. How about I get rid of everything that's going on over here?
If you get rid of the enchantments, I can get rid of the creatures.
Or I can get rid of everything.
Okay.
And it won't affect you, but I don't want to be attacked. No attacks coming in this direction whatsoever. For 1 turn.
Okay. Watch out, you're gonna feel the pain train right now.
Oh, I'm ready for it. Ooh, minus. Yeah.
We're going to -6.
Yeah. How do you feel? How do you feel right now?
I feel fine.
Oh, you're fine? No big deal? Cool. I'm the only one upset.
With the board now clear, I pass to Joseph. He draws for turn and plays another forest. He then taps 3 to cast his commander, Tymna the Weaver. He then moves to combat and swings his robot at Mike. Mike takes 2, and on his second main phase, Joseph pays 1 to draw a card thanks to Tymna. With nothing else, he ends his turn. Daniel draws for turn and plays a mountain. He then taps 3 mana to cast Grumgully the Generous. With his 1 remaining mana, he equips it with the Skull Clamp.
Oh yeah, I still have a full hand of cards. How about that? It's pretty cool.
Mike then taps 4 mana to cast an Academy Rector, no doubt setting up to grab an Omniscience with it when it dies. He then taps 2 to cast a Thought Vessel, and with his remaining 2 mana, casts an Argothian Enchantress. With nothing else, he ends his turn. I untap, draw a card, and play a Darksteel Citadel as my land drop. Now that both of our deals were upheld, I activate my Ugin's +2 ability to deal 3 damage to Tymna, taking her out. I then tap out to cast Artisan at Kozilek with no creature to return from my graveyard, and forgetting to take 2 from my Ancient Tomb. And I'm just going to do this right now, so I don't forget it again. Joseph then draws and plays another forest as his land drop. He then moves straight to combat and swings his robot at me. I probably should just let it hit me, but decide to just block it instead. The sad robot dies, and Joseph draws a card. I then regret my decision, as Joseph taps 6 to cast Merciless Eviction, choosing to exile all creatures. After that, he passes to Daniel. Daniel untaps, and starts to rebuild by casting Halana, Kessig Granger. He then passes to Mike. Mike starts his turn by casting Sithis, Harvest's Hand. He did forget to roll for the mana crypt and does so now, losing 3 life. He then casts Eidolon of Countless Battles for its bestow cost and enchants Sithis. He then draws a card and gains a life for casting an enchantment. He finds an arid mesa and plays it. I then start my turn and play a command beacon as my land drop. After that, I tap out to cast Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, choosing to exile Joseph's Zoning Black Source and Mike's Mana Crypt.
How dare you hit a man's land?
Because I can just kill it with the...
Yeah, you got this because nobody cares.
Just for that remark, I uptick Ugin to deal 3 damage to Sithis. Sithis dies, but the Eidolon stays on the battlefield as a 1/1. I then tap the Lux Cannon to put the 3rd charge counter on it. Joseph draws and plays a Lotus Cobra, and plays a Plains as his land drop, making a white mana with the Lotus Cobra. He then uses that white mana to help pay for Shalai, Voice of Plenty. After that, he ends his turn.
At least I'm getting to play this game, so
I am happy for you.
Daniel then starts his turn by casting Signal the Clans to search up 3 creatures from his deck. He chooses a Dragon Brood Mother, Dragon Lair Spider, and a Huntmaster of the Fells. He then shuffles them up and turns them face down, and chooses 1 to put into his hand randomly with a dice roll. After that, he taps 2 green mana to cast Night Soil. On his end step, Mike pays 1 life to sack his Arid Mesa and searches up a tapped Hollowed Fountain to the battlefield. He then draws for turn and taps 4 to cast Bear Umbra, enchanting the Eidolon and making it a 4/4. After that, he moves to combat and swings at Joseph. Mike untaps his lands with the Bear Umbra, and Joseph takes 4. On his second main phase, Mike casts Kruphix's Insight. He reveals the top 6 cards of his library and chooses 3 enchantments to put into his hand, which are Sylvan Library, Aura Shards, and Luminarch Ascension, and the rest are put into his graveyard. He then casts the Luminarch Ascension and ends his turn. I untap and draw for turn, playing a Field of Ruin as my land drop. I then tap it and cast a Mana Vault. After that, I tap 10 mana, taking 2 from the Ancient Tomb, and also remembering I forgot to take 2 the last turn I used it. I then cast my commander, Kozilek, the Great Distortion. As I cast it, I refill my hand by drawing 5 cards. Next, I use Ugin's Minus ability to exile all colored permanents 4 CMC or less.
-4?
Yeah.
Thought I was going to be playing cards.
I then move to combat and roll a dice to see who Ulamog will hit. Unfortunate for Joseph, he loses by winning the die roll. He then exiles the top 20 cards from his library and takes 10.
Yeah, I have my own.
Play a forest.
Oh dear.
I am my turn. All this I can't play.
He can't find a black mana source for the life of him and passes to Daniel.
Why didn't you kill the Ugin? This is your fault.
We made a deal.
Yes.
Stop making deals with the devil.
Daniel taps 3 to cast Rhythm of the Wild and simply passes. Mike draws for turn and casts an Aura Shards. He then taps 3 to cast Citizen Champion. But with the spell on the stack, I remove the 3 charge counters from the Lux Cannon to destroy the Aura Shards. With his plans to deal with some of my board foiled, he passes. I then start my turn, paying to untap the Mana Vault and playing in Urza's Mine. I tap 5 to cast Forsaken Monument.
I think I called this whole shebang before we began.
We're screwed.
This happens every time he plays this.
After that, I spend 4 mana to cast Mystic Forge. I look at the top card of my library and cast a Soul Ring from it, and gain life when doing so from the Forsaken Monument. I then pay another 4 mana to cast Karn the Great Creator, gaining 2 more life. After that, I activate Ugin to deal 3 damage to Mike's Citizen Champion. I then move to combat. I swing Kozilek at Mike for 14 commander damage, and Ulamog at Joseph for 12 this time, and exiling another 20 cards. On On my second main phase, I cast Steel Hellkite, gaining another 2 life. I then activate Karn, making Mike's Thought Vessel a 2/2 creature.
I mean, I have a thing.
Yeah.
If you can get rid of that thing.
Nope. No. I have a hard nothing.
Joseph then casts an austere command, choosing to destroy all creatures CMC 4 or greater, and all artifacts. It does take quite a few things away from me, but leaves me with an ᴑɪᴏᴏ and an ᴑɪᴏᴜᴜ still. Daniel starts turn 10 by casting Radha, Heart of 광ᴜᴜ. He decides to give her haste with the Rhythm of the Wild, and then goes to combat, swinging her at ᴑɪᴏᴜ.
I'm gonna attack ᴑɪᴜᴜ.
Yeah, buddy. Somebody did it finally. I'm excited. I can lose this game happily when that ᴑɪᴜᴜ is gone.
And I will.
Oh, these are gone.
Why?
Because I'll have to.
Oh,
you destroyed all
the
the
artifacts.
artifacts. You couldn't activate them either anyway because of Karn.
Come on.
Better.
Who'd you attack?
I attacked ᴑɪᴜᴜ.
Ooh. Oh, that's right. I was here.
Mike finally remembers where he's at, and casts a Satyr Enchanter, followed by Helm of the Gods. He spends his last mana to equip it to his creature, even though Karn restricts him from doing so. I start my turn by sacking my command beacon to put Kozilek from the command zone into my hand. I then cast him and refill my hand by drawing 3 cards. After that, I move to combat and swing ᴑɪᴏᴏ at Joseph, taking him out of the game. Before I end my turn, I do remember to take my damage from the Ancient Tomb. Daniel plays another mountain on his turn. He then taps out to cast his commander again, and passes. Mike starts his turn casting a Sylvan Library, and drawing a card off the Enchanter. He then plays a Marsh Flats and simply passes the turn to me. I draw for turn and play a Waste as my land drop. I then tap 8, taking 2 from the tomb, and use the mana to cast Eldrazi Conscription, targeting my commander. After that, I move to combat, but the guys have seen enough and decide to throw in the towel. Looks like another win for me and Kozilek. Even though this is not the fastest start I've had with the deck, it was good enough to get ᴑɪᴜᴜ out on turn 5 and completely take over the game from that point. After that, the turns just kinda got worse and worse for everyone. I did forget to take 2 for my Ancient Tomb a couple times, but don't beat me up in the comments too much, cause I also missed some Forsaken Monument life gain triggers too, so it sort of balances itself out. Daniel's deck missed a lot of land drops, and didn't make a huge impact on the game. I think he was relying on his commander and Radha to help generate mana, but ᴑɪᴜᴜ kept that from happening by exiling them. After that, he was only able to play 1 spell at a time and was unable to get his game plan online. This left him with a handful of big CMC creatures he couldn't cast. Joseph's deck is very strong and can usually get out of hand quickly, but this game he was a big factor in letting me win the game by making that deal with me, allowing me to keep ᴑɪᴜᴜ after wiping the board, let me get the upper hand, and kept him alive long enough to continue wiping the board. After that, ᴑɪᴜᴜ came down and exiled most of his deck, including any answers he may have had for my threats. Mike had a great start to the game and was off to the races. Had it not been for ᴑɪᴜᴜ and Merciless Eviction exiling his board on back-to-back turns, this might have been a completely different game. I don't think I've ever seen Mike not go for Omniscience with Academy Rector, but being able to cast enchantment after enchantment for free and draw through his deck while doing so could have been enough to put him in the lead and close out the game. So here's to Joseph for giving me the game and, more importantly, taking it away from Mike. Well, that's it for this game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to like the video and leave a comment, and if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Before we go, we'd like to give a big thank you to our amazing patrons. We are glad to have your support and thankful for each and every one of you. We here at In Response would like to thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure you follow us on our social medias. We also stream every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for watching. Have an awesome day.